This is the 508 Show, a show about Worcester. It's September the 21st, 2018. I am Mike Benedetti, the co-host, and this is Brendan Melican, the co-host, and our guest today, Romina Barria, on the show today, biologist, soon-to-be ex-Worcesterite.
Yes.
You leaving us?
Yeah, I'm leaving.
There's no smart people left.
You know, I mean, so as usual, when people leave the city of Worcester, we're going to do an exit interview with Romina on today's show. We could also talk about local surveillance oversight. I feel like there's lots of news about the Catholic clergy abuse scandals, but I'm not sure. None of it's local. I don't think we should talk about it too much on the show, just because the show will bog down in that. We should certainly talk about what happened this week on this week's episode of Worcester. And
Taking your lead, Mike.
The Great Worcester Magazine Radio Hour prior to us was talking about vandalized statues in Worcester. And I'll tell you what's a prominent vandalized statue in Worcester is the George Frisbie Hoar statue in front of City Hall.
I did not know that.
I did not know until fairly a couple months ago that this was a vandalized statue. Yeah, Senator Hoar, famous for his glasses.
Okay.
His tiny, dainty glasses. And so if you look at the statue of Senator Hoar, he looks like Raymond Burr up there. He looks like he's ready to come up off that chair. And if you're in support of the Spanish American War or whatever, he's just going to sock you right in the face with one of those gigantic fists of his. But you look at a picture of him on the internet, and he's got the little glasses on, and you're like, well, Senator Hoar is a very bookish man, a very gentle man.
Huh.
It's a totally different vibe. The glasses, of course. You can just imagine a tiny pair of glasses, metal glasses on that statue. They got ripped off. They used to get ripped off all the time, I guess. And then at some point in ancient history, they stopped replacing the glasses. Yeah.
I did not know. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
If anyone out there has an original pair of Senator Hoar statues glasses, bring those down. I'd like to actually see those.
I mean, I kind of want to do the reverse vandalization.
I was just going to say, coat hangers. We should start making our own glasses out of coat hangers, and like novelty glasses, like little hearts or something, the stars.
Sunglasses.
Yeah, but we should do it so they kind of fit, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you're saying like a Bootsy Collins glasses, but like just like the metal frame.
Right. So we would make them out of like coat hangers or something, like a metal that would tarnish, and it might actually fit the.
Oh, there's a caller already? Oh my.
We lost a caller.
We lost the caller? Thank God. Okay. So in front of City Hall is a statue of Senator George...
No, we get a caller back, Mike.
Oh, hi, caller. How are you? Oh, no. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Is this Senator Hoar?
Yes. This is what...
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Can you hear us at all?
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Finally. It was the Macho Man, Randy Savage.
Can you hear me?
Calling in.
Hang up on this caller. So, in front of City
Can't
Hall,
hang up on the Macho Man.
In front of City Hall, there's a statue of prominent Worcester citizen George Frisbie Hoar, who was, among other things, a United States senator, and actually had, I think, a fairly progressive record on many things, and so is a hero to many people. Longtime abolitionist, opposition to imperialist wars. Is this a real caller? Is there any way that you can talk to this? Go ahead. I guess we kind of go ahead. We deserve this. Yeah. Hi, caller.
Hello? You know, I've been doing a little listening, yeah. And I've been doing a little reading, yeah. And Lyford, I gotta say, brother, you're a hack.
I agree with you 100%. I want to apologize for being such a hack.
But Lyford's show ended 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, but that's all right. That's all right.
Oh, God.
We can probably run out to the parking lot and grab him, though, if you really need to talk to him now. Otherwise, maybe give him a call at the office. But
there was one episode of this show, Gabby, that was essentially just white noise because of recording problems, and I feel like we're kind of approaching that on today's show. Romina, hi. Welcome to the show.
Hey. Hey, guys.
So, Romina, you are originally from the country of Chile.
Yes.
But you've lived in Worcester for a while now.
My life in Worcester has been divided in two parts. No, I came for 5 years. I left, and then I came back.
And then you came back.
So it's like, yeah.
So I want to do.
Time, but sorry.
I want to apologize. I should apologize before and after every interview we do on the show. How did you come to work for the company? Or I should say, how did you come to move to Worcester?
So for work, so I came to UMass to work in a lab, neurobiology lab.
Mm-hmm.
I came to do my master, part of my master, so of my thesis, and yeah, because it was very hard to do it in Chile, so I came here, and then my professor here at UMass offered me a job, so I said, okay, I'll be there for a year, and then I stayed 5 years.
Yeah,
It was the first time.
What was it about? I should say the second question here is, why are you leaving the company?
And now I'm leaving it for work again. So
Work-related reasons. What is Worcester doing right? What is the company doing right?
Well, Worcester has this, sense of community. It's like it's a small city, so we have so you can connect with people easily if you make the right connections, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I guess that is what I think Worcester is doing well, but it's like about the people. The people are doing that well.
It's not necessarily
it's hard to tell what, like, for example, the city is doing well.
It's not like the
For me, it's really
executives
hard
of
to say.
right. I'm always curious.
The correct answer there, by the way,
Yes.
was we vandalize historical monuments. That's what we're doing.
We
right?
do. We're doing.
Well,
right
no, I mean,
with
look
that.
at any major country, right? That or even down south, right? Like how much it takes for people to actually deface or damage a statue, right? Like, I mean, you got to get people really, really angry before they start throwing a noose around Lenin's neck and pulling him down. And Worcester, we just do it for fun. It's because it's Saturday, nothing else to do.
Okay.
This wasn't a game show, is what you're telling me. It's where there's no right or wrong answers.
I don't know what we're doing. I'm curious to dig in a little bit more about the experience of getting to understand Worcester better, to learning how to live in Worcester. Because one question I want to ask is, what advice do you have for the next person? What advice do you have for the next person in your position? What advice do you have for somebody who's moving to Worcester for the first time? Like in your case, how long did it take before the connectedness of the Worcester community became a part of your life? Was this just like the first day you moved to Worcester, suddenly you felt like you were connected to a bunch of people?
It took me some time, so like a few months. And
Okay.
also, when I came here the first time, I have the barrier of the language. I didn't know any word in English. I was just speaking Spanish, so first 2 months it was like learn and understand what people were talking about. But then I met some Latinos friends, and they speak Spanish. So and then they introduced me some people at Stone Soup, for example, and then that's how I start getting my connections and get involved in different organizations. And I would say, if people want to come to Worcester, you really need to be proactive. So you can't just, it's not like, for example, Boston or big cities that you just walk around and then you have tons of things to do. Here, no, you have very selective places, very you have to find your niche, your way to go around and if you are not so social anyway, you can try to find maybe groups here and there, but you have to do something. Otherwise, you will think that Worcester is not a really good place. But for me, I love Worcester, but because of people, groups, community. But I have to work on that.
But you got to put those couple months in.
What?
You have to put a couple of months of work in.
Yeah, and go and research and check. I don't know. So that is how I.
Is there much of a Chilean population, immigrant population in Worcester?
No.
No, there's not?
I know 2 Chileans here.
No kidding?
Yeah, 2 or 3. No, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, so most people are in Boston. Well, my boss, my first boss, she was Chilean. But and I met some more.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
but there is a population in Boston?
Yeah, there are more in Boston.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't really interact much.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. I wasn't sure. I mean, we talk a lot about, there are so many, Worcester has become such an incredible city it's always been an incredible city for immigrants. But it oftentimes, as silly as it sounds, it gets hard to actually keep track of waves of populations coming through and whatnot. And I think in the past we've kind of tried to nail down some of the smaller groups and whatnot just to try and figure out where people are coming. Like the Mandeans are still my favorite story, right? Like how did that happen in Worcester and whatnot? And I don't think we've still really nailed down the.
We're going to get them on the show. No, I think the name is certainly known of the first Mandean guy to move to Worcester.
Okay.
Not off the top of my head, but yeah. What is Worcester doing? What is Worcester doing badly that it could be doing a better job of? And by Worcester, I mean just the city as a whole, the city administration, however you want to define it.
I think many things. Well, first of all, public transportation. That definitely is something that could be fixed in a better way. I don't drive, so I always bike everywhere. So, and I love biking, but not everybody can do that, and not everybody feels like safe driving as a biking, for example. So, public transportation is something that needs to be fixed. And it's not that difficult, really. It's just like organize better the routes for the buses and things like that. That is just like trying to do a better job. It's not that difficult, and because you have the resources, it's like the city has the resources. So it's just like try to organize things in a more smart way and convenient for the people that they are giving the service. Plus that, and also have better bike lines and everything for like the people that bike, so the people can feel secure. So we were just watching a documentary about women that are like organizing through these theme bikes, and because they don't feel safe biking alone, or they don't have good bike lines. It was in LA, but here, for example, it's a small city, so you have big wide streets. It's pretty easy, so there are so many things that can be fixed easily without investing so much money. It's just try. Do you feel
like Worcester's
no.
Do you feel like Worcester's an easy city to bike in?
Yeah. It's like compared to Santiago, where I used to live, this is a paradise. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually really interesting too.
You don't have so much crime that they're not gonna steal your bike right away, which that happened over there in Santiago, and also you don't have like so many trucks and things going next to you without a bike line. So here you have like a lot of space and cars, and people are like less aggressive than over there. So I feel pretty safe biking here. So.
I love this analysis because I would never say that I feel particularly great about biking in Worcester, but again, like I'm just soft. I'm soft.
Almost 10 years biking. Yeah, all my time here happened.
Is there any advice that you wish you had gotten before you came to Worcester, or would it just be the same kind of thing, like just hang on a couple months and everything will snap into place?
What I would say is like feel your instinct, wherever you, because people gave me advice when I got here at UMass, they gave me advice, they gave you an orientation and all that, and I didn't follow those advice at all. So because they said, don't go to Main Street, don't go here, this is so dangerous. I said, no, I want to explore things on my own. The first thing I did, it was come here and walk around and see my city. So I feel that, people should, whatever they feel they want to do, they should do it, I think,
you mentioned like stone souping, an important part of finding people to connect with in Worcester, and that's exactly in the part of Maine South that UMass would tell you don't go anywhere near that place.
It's like, and that really changed my point of my view of the city. So and that's how I met like amazing people. That's why it's so hard now living. It's like So if I would have followed those advice, forget it. I will feel like many people at UMass that they really are there just for studies, and they think, Worcester sucks.
And they never actually get out into the city at all. Yeah.
This is 508, Worcester's Libertarian Voice. We'll be back in a minute with more. Did you watch this week's episode of Worcester?
I caught a little bit of it.
What struck you this week?
What struck me this week? Actually, it was a pretty good week, right? So we had that on Monday. We'll go back to Sunday, Start on the Street. That was pretty fantastic.
I feel like that was the big thing.
That was really good.
Incredible turnout once again. Beautiful day. I feel like that event, how long has it been going on now? 15 years?
Long time.
Longer than 15 years, maybe? I don't know.
No, 15 years sounds about right.
But what's crazy to me is I feel as though this is one of those events that is actually benefited by climate change.
Because the weather is pretty good.
Every year it seems to be getting warmer, and it's staying warmer and more comfortable. I remember the first couple of years, like it was kind of chilly. It was like flannel shirt weather and whatnot. The sun was low. You weren't quite sure if it was summer anymore. It might be deep fall. Could go sideways any minute.
They've definitely experimented with the date, the time, the place, all those kinds of things a lot over the last 15 years.
Yeah, well, it's stayed pretty much the second week after Labor Day, hasn't it?
The one on Park Avenue?
Well, because it used to be Main Street. That one, so the Main Street went to Park Avenue. The original start on the street was Main South.
Okay.
On the other side of Madison Street, or Main Street, right? So once you get to Madison, it was down by Worcester's old arts district.
Huh.
And then it moved to Park. That one became the Park Ave event. Then there was the other off-season one that was down on Main Street for a couple seasons. Main Street.
There was one in Beaver Brook. There was one in the Canal District. Or I should say, there's one in Beaver Brook Park.
I don't remember Beaver Brook Park.
There
I do remember
was.
the Canal District and but they've all been different times of the year.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
and then they're starting the station.
Well, and that's what I think is that there was also the one they do in the Canal District sometimes. And that, over the years, they just figured out, like, this is the time to do it. This is the location to do it. This is the number of blocks to take up.
Yeah.
Like, I remember one year, not that many years ago, when they were doing it on Park Avenue, and I think Harry and the Potters, local and internationally known wizard rock band, were playing, and they played to essentially, like, 3 people.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine anybody playing to 3 people this year at Start on the Street. Like, things are positioned in the right place, and there's people around that more than 3 people will just sort of wander up to whatever you're doing at Start on the Street now.
Yeah.
I had a really good time. I spent the whole time, as usual, handing out Issues of Happiness Pony to people. And I'll tell you a big difference between this year and last year is usually I end up talking to a number of city councilors, a number of people running for office, just standing there. Because I don't do a lot of walking around. I just sort of stand in one place and let Start on the Street pass by, and which always works great. But this year I didn't talk to a single politician or aspiring politician.
The highlight of the day for me was finding that That's Entertainment was selling cans of Moxie and Tab for 75 cents.
Really?
Yeah, and I was really bummed because in hindsight I should have brought more money. I would have bought the entire ice chest of Tab and Moxie for 75 cents a piece and sold them for $1.50 out in the street. But thank you for That's Entertainment for having such reasonably priced cans of unhealthy sugar water.
That is very kind of them. Romina, you were at Start on the Street.
Yeah.
What is your as somebody who's lived in Worcester for a few years now, what was your experience of being at Start on the Street?
Well, it's one of my favorite events of Worcester, and I think should be done something like that more often. So at least twice or in a year. Yeah. So because it's really nice just to see so many people around. You feel so alive, and you run into with so many friends. So it's like a really good moments that you can really see people that you don't see so often as well. So it's really cool to I don't know. You
hear that, Tina Zalotti? Leaving Worcester specifically because you don't host Start on the Street enough.
I would say in their defense though, like good weather is a problem. Like I think about the Veg Fest as being another event where I do kind of the same thing as Start on the Street. Like I'll do some volunteering and then I'll spend a lot of time standing in one place handing out old newspapers. But it's a lot less fun because it's in this building and it's crowded.
We were just talking about that with other friends. That like the Veg Fest will be great. It could be outside
and the weather would be nice. But it's because the crowds at some point just become disturbing and they're not like energizing like they can be in Start on the Street. But I can also just think, the Veg Fest is in April. Like frequently the Veg Fest is on a cold day, a rainy day, a whatever day. So you kind of got to have it inside.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how many months of the year you could reliably have a Start on the Street in Worcester.
Well, Boston does SOA, every week of the year for, 20 years now? The model is definitely there.
All right, I'm just a naysayer. Don't listen to me. Don't pay attention to me. I would say except for the Start on the Street, I only sort of half paid attention to this week's episode, like while I was cleaning the house or whatever. So I'm not really sure what else is going on in Worcester. I know that there was the big Grand and Glorious Celebration of Worcester parade on Monday.
I hope the generation behind us really learns to hate us as a generation for allowing city officials to use words like grand, glorious, magical, and magnificent to describe public events.
I'll tell you something, man. If we hadn't already named this podcast, I would definitely be happy to call this podcast a Grand and Glorious Podcast of Worcester.
Yeah,
I think that's a hilarious
name. You have a healthy
name.
sense of irony.
I think it's hilarious
outside
name.
of the realm of the ice-capades, I'm not sure that those words should ever be strung together, unless you're formally supported by Disney.
There was a bunch of Worcester news and some sort of minor and major probably crime news in Worcester this week. The only Worcester story that really jumped out at me from this week is that the ACLU is gearing up to ask the city council to have the Worcester Police get body cameras and to ask the city council to do some meaningful oversight of how we do surveillance on people in Worcester, specifically how the police do. But I guess that's our main source of government surveillance in Worcester. I think this is an interesting story. I'm not really sure what we can say about it today. Like, this is something we've talked about for more than a decade on this show, is Worcester's enthusiasm about surveilling its citizens. And it seems like every time there's a surveillance-related issue that comes up in front of the city council, there's not even really a conversation around trade-offs and around, okay, we have to give up some privacy for this or that reason. It's just more like, how can we maximize surveillance, Brendan?
Yeah.
How can we? I mean, like, what can we do? Like, there's no negatives to this. Like, this is only a positive thing, and the only negative really to the way we do it is that we don't do enough of it. That whatever Worcesterite wants is there to be not just one camera on them at all times, but 2 cameras. That's what the average citizen really wants, and I don't think that's actually.
It's not supposed to be how it works, Mike.
I don't think it's true, but I think it's definitely how the city council has always looked at this issue.
I would only be half surprised to find that the city council's response to the ACLU's inquest here was to say, you know what, this whole police body cam thing, that doesn't make any sense. We're going to have every citizen and resident in the city of Worcester wear body cams, and the police will be fine without them that way.
Have you looked at all at what the ACLU is proposing here?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the big one is the data from what I've seen is the data collection when it comes to the LPR setup style cameras that are on a fair number of police vehicles here in Worcester, but they're pretty much statewide at this point. And what's really cool about them from a technology perspective, and I think why they were so attractive to municipalities, and again, this is stuff we talked about years ago. I think it's something that Reason Magazine, Boing Boing, like all the places that were kind of trying to be a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes to surveillance. We were talking about this a decade ago. They're attractive to municipalities and government because the storage isn't in the hands of the municipality and the government. There are third parties that come in, provide the cameras, outfit the cruisers and whatnot, and then the storage is handled by those services as well. So it's just another aspect of big data brokering and what have you. I'm really curious to see what the city's response to this is, because I would guess outside of some folks in the administration on both the police department side and in City Hall, you probably have almost nobody that understands how the technology works.
Chris Robarsh, friend of this show and head of the local ACLU, says the public doesn't know enough about how the Worcester Police use the army of cameras it monitors as its real-time crime center. And I feel like in talking to Chris, I had the impression that the city council has never really had a conversation around like what we do with these cameras, what we do with this stuff. That there's never sort of been this report to the council saying, here's our surveillance situation. That, again, it's just handled, bit by bit, year by year, builds up, but that there's never this moment where the council says, let's look at the lay of the land and think about where we want to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the easy way to really, I think, for citizens to ensure that their best interests are taken at heart when it comes to that kind of passive surveillance is very similar to what we saw 20 plus years ago when we started rolling out automated toll systems in Massachusetts, right? Like, the one thing the legislature wanted to make sure of is that there was not going to be any data collection as to how people went through the tolls from a law enforcement perspective, right? Because simple math would say, I don't hope the guy in the Caltech hat can back me up on this one, but like, if you had somebody enter a Mass Pike exit in Worcester and then get off in Newton, all you'd have to do is a little bit of averaging, and you could probably write somebody a $200 ticket for the amount of speeding that they did in that time frame, right?
Yes.
Wicked easy to do. But you could also see patterns, right? And it was my understanding that there was a significant fear from the legislature itself that it would open up the possibility down the line that someone could actually look at patterns in work and travel, right? So for the 40-ish% of Americans that are having affairs right now, according to any meaningful study, the Worcester Police Department knows everything about your affairs, right? Because every time you drive somewhere in the city, no matter where you go, a camera is picking up your license plate, it's picking up your car, and those patterns build up over time. All of you, every pattern you have to go to work, maybe you stop at a bar on your way home from work and you don't tell your significant other about that. The Worcester Police Department knows about it, even if they don't think they know about it, right? Because that data has been collected for years.
That they know these are the 5 neighborhoods that where you go all the time,
or only every other Tuesday at exactly 7:00, right?
Yes.
And for anyone that like hears that and thinks, well, you're just being weird and paranoid, take out your smartphone, pull up Google Maps, and look at the history that Google has going back 10, 15, 20 years now on all of your driving patterns. And if you haven't been an active participant in securing the way a company like Google uses your data, just imagine what the public sector has access to at this point, because they're the ones who buy all that data.
I have a paper here, Brendan, called Why Are Conversations Limited to About 4 People? A Theoretical Exploration of the Conversation Size Constant or Constraint. I think this is interesting just in terms of how many guests we should ever have on the show.
Only 4?
I'm not sure that this is a legit paper. Why
are we reading it?
I mean, it's an accepted manuscript, so that's something. This is by Jamie Arona Krems and Jason Wilkes. It is being published in the journal Evolution and Human Behavior. It is genuinely difficult to sustain a casual conversation that includes more than 4 speakers. Add a 5th speaker, and the conversation often fissions into smaller groups. Termed the dinner party problem, this 4-person conversation size limit is believed to be caused by evolved cognitive constraints on human mentalizing capacities. In this view, people can mentally manage 3 other minds at any one time, leading to 4-person conversations, but whereas existing work has posited and empirically tested alternative accounts of what drives the conversation size constraint, to our knowledge, no work has explored the question of why this capacity is specifically 4. In this theoretical paper, we review research demonstrating this cognitive constraint in sociality, review the relevant working memory literature, which has explored the why for question at some length, and we begin to pose possible answers to our specific social why for question. So they just basically run some math, and they suggest that our social brains have evolved to model interpersonal dynamics when considering other people as opposed to exclusively objects or digits as the limited chunks that our mind must navigate. A 4-person conversation may be special because it is the largest conversation size with more possible dyads in which the self is involved, inclusive dyads, than possible dyads in which the self is not involved, exclusive dyads. Actually, I think it might be exactly the same number of inclusive and exclusive dyads at a conversation size of 4. Does that make any sense to either of you, what I just said?
I think that explains completely. If we go back to our original caller, why a tag team wrestling match is always more interesting than a battle royale.
Right, and it's because you just can't follow.
Everything.
You just can't follow the moves of 4 people.
It's halfway over before you realize that Steve Austin just cleared the entire ring and it's done.
I mean, so I can read the numbers out to you too, and you can tell me if you find this to be plausible. Romina, I don't know if this is as somebody who is involved in the world of academic papers. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you feel okay talking crap about somebody's paper on the radio. So if you don't, feel free to not. But I definitely do as somebody who's not in this game. So if you're talking with one other person, there's obviously only one subgroup that you can make there. If you have 3 people, there are 4 different subgroups. 2 of them are conversations of you and another person, and 1 of them is a conversation of the other 2 people. And then at 4, there are 11 subgroups, possible subgroups. 3 of those subgroups are you talking with one of the other 3 people, and 3 of those subgroups are different combinations of the other people talking to each other. And so that's the argument here, which is that when you get up to 5, suddenly this starts to go way out of control, and you've got way more groups of people, pairs of people that you would have to keep track of that don't involve you than that do involve you, so that I guess maybe you wouldn't care about those as much as the ones that involve you, and so maybe your brain would just say we're interested in developing other capabilities, or evolutionarily there wouldn't be as much of a benefit in your brain getting good at 5-person subgroups.
Sounds like this is the kind of guy who turns around and says that that you wonder how they function at parties.
Yeah, well, my first question would be what type of group that they in which culture they did the study, because that depends a lot of your culture as well. Because for example,
yes.
Latinos, we can speak like everybody at the same time, 10 people, and it's not a big deal, and you can include everyone. But sometimes I have noticed in US that just 3 people. It's not possible, like, just to talk. Another one is not there.
I
so
don't-
happen, like, depends. So that's why it's, like, depend a lot in the, or, like, it's like, I don't know.
I mean,
Like,
I don't have the. I mean, I don't.
so
have
that
the,
will be my first critics
yes.
on this. The saying,
Yes.
like, you can't really have like a theory without like having different group. I mean, like a representative group of different. I mean, cultures. That would be a big thing, I would say.
His entire research was based on the idea that he was the youngest child in a family of 3 kids and 2 parents, and he's just really angry that nobody ever paid any attention to him.
I mean, this is the. I usually print out all of these papers. This one I had to sort of pirate I mean, the part that even explains what they're doing, I had to pirate, so I didn't print it all out. And I wish that I had, because then I could have. I feel like we could have flipped through it and tried to understand what.
Like, can we talk about some real interesting research?
Go for it.
You're a biologist. What kind of biology?
Neurobiology.
Neurobiology. Did you happen to read the paper that started, or the study that started circulating yesterday about the researchers that gave MDMA to octopuses? It's fascinating, like legit peer-reviewed research, but like now, like the more palatable public sort of commentaries coming out. You give octopuses MDMA, Molly,
What happened?
they act just like humans. Yeah, like
They're
they
into
start
it.
avoiding all of like the weird sort of fight or flight stuff that comes into play between small octopuses and big like male octopuses. They freak out a little bit, but then they start going through like really weird changes of like color flashing to show that they're freaking out. So they'll go completely pale for a little while as they start to roll, as the kids would say. But then they just start hanging out together and getting all touchy feely with their tentacles and whatnot.
Oh.
That's interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
would you?
There are many behaviors in insects or like different type of animals that are exactly like humans. So
Yeah, but
so-
totally. But it was just
and
interesting.
it's-
This was all
it's
based
very
on
inter-
them being
yeah.
high on MDMA, and I don't think anyone. I would really like to meet the people who sat down one day and said, you know what we need to do is find a federal grant that's going to allow us to dose octopuses with a big batch of MDMA.
You know,
Those people are going to be a good time, Mike.
I just have to point out as somebody wearing a Caltech hat that I should recognize the pioneering bizarro work of my fellow Caltech alum John Lilly, who back in the 60s, of course, gave acid to dolphins. Basically discovering nothing as far as I'm aware. But it is something that he did, among many other weirdo researches.
I don't think that's very
back
weird
in
at
the
all.
day.
You probably wouldn't have the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy if not for John Lilly giving
Acid to dolphins?
Yeah.
I don't really know what...
Thanks for all the fish, man.
Yeah, I remember reading something about this, a chapter about this. I don't remember what happened to them. You know, there's 9 structures on Worcester's 2018 most endangered list, according to Preservation Worcester. And
Does that include the one we just started tearing down in this week's episode of Worcester?
Let me see. Yeah, this is what we did. You know, actually, there was a great... I should have printed it out. There was an amazing quotation in the Telegram article about the tearing down of Notre Dame Church, because they were talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could preserve all the stained glass windows?
Yeah.
Obviously. And they're not going to be able to preserve them all. And I believe a representative of the diocese said, well, you know, there's just a lot of stained glass windows on the market right now. It's not like it used to be.
Yeah.
Which is definitely a sign of, as we were saying, maybe post-Catholic Worcester or post-Catholic stained glass market.
You'd think he'd put them on, at least try and put them on eBay or something, though, right? Well, there's going to be a little bit of money to be made there.
I mean, I don't know. I probably there's a lot of costs involved in terms of like saving them and whatever. Like I'm sure if they could make even $5, you know, they would sell it to us for $5. But it's a question of like how many person hours does it take to get that down, put that in a box, get that to your house. Probably a lot.
A lot of people.
I'm sure it costs hundreds of bucks to get that sucker to your house. Here's what they are. So this is from Cyrus Moulton's article in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, because the Preservation Worcester website does not have a good listing of these. I bet you they think they do, but they
you had
don't.
one job, Preservation Worcester.
They don't. They need to have a PDF or a website that just has all this information on it in a nice way that I can read it all rather than having to click all around the world. One of them is the Joel Bjorklund Lodging House at 56 Laurel Street.
Okay.
Do you know what this is?
I don't.
This is the first year the structure has made the list. Built in 1900, this 3-story wood frame structure in the Second Empire style has always been a 3-family home since the time of one of its first tenants, coincidentally named Joel Bjorklund, a salesman. However, it has undergone a lot of neglect. One of them is ghost signs, citywide. We were just talking about, you were telling me the other day about that the man's face on the side of the Sahara restaurant.
Oh yeah.
Which I always assumed was like Granddaddy Sahara, whoever founded that restaurant. That it was this, this old Lebanese guy, in his portrait. I mean, and
the first member of the family to come over from the Sahara. Yeah.
And honestly, I thought that this was
Alan Balzerian.
Right. Well, so you tell me, but he did not start a restaurant on that site.
No, he started a men's clothing company, and then later moved his men's clothing company to Boston, and then they shut down the Worcester one. But that was, even when I was a kid, up to my teenage years, early 20s, that was Worcester's legit, really nice men's clothing store. Like Shaq's was the sort of upper blue collar, the working class men's clothing store. Alan Balzerian had to get buzzed to get in. That's where the guy that you're going to be waiting on you. Tape measures already around the neck, sort of thing. And he was dressed the way you hoped to be dressed when you left. You wanted a bespoke suit. That's where you went.
He looks really slick in that painting.
Yeah, that's the one I'd love to see refurbed. That sign.
Well, I think about that. There are, I guess they say, ghost signs are faded, hand-painted advertising signs on buildings, which harken back to the 1920s and 30s. So we have plenty of these involving soap or shoes or whatever in Worcester.
Oils them.
I think that one's got to be the one in the best condition, though, because like I said, that's a ghost sign that I've assumed was actually owned by the business because it was in good shape. Yeah. I mean, not great shape, but not terrible shape.
Yeah,
that's actually something I've wondered in recent years as it's begun to fade and chip a little bit. Is there some reason that the Sahara owners are no longer so happy with Granddaddy Sahara that they're letting his portrait kind of
fade,
deteriorate?
Yeah.
But one of them is the the Jewish bathhouse at 4 Huntley Street, Bais Havelo Mikvah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what this is?
I do not.
We're just going to read these. Lothrop's Opera House, a.k.a. the Olympia Theater. You know what that is.
Of course.
It's on the WRA's downtown urban revitalization plan as a potential building to be demolished. It is in a district of buildings listed on the National Register of Historic Places and is one of the few blocks of downtown Worcester where the original buildings are all intact and connected. And it's been closed for about a little over 10 years now.
Sounds about right.
And you've been in that building, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple times.
What's it like in there?
Old theater.
Okay.
That's just it. But now if you've been in recently, they put a little bit of work into it to actually start rehabbing the space, potentially. I don't know if the owners of the building have continued with this line of interest, but there was at one point in time at least some hope about a art house theater coming in to take it over, do short runs, art house film type stuff.
But right now that's super vacant.
Right now it is all just vacant.
Last week at the city council meeting, I don't know if you saw this, that there was an item about the Mt Carmel deed restriction. I'll read my summary of this. There's a letter from the state about the deed restriction on the Mt Carmel property. The property is indeed restricted to be used for, quote, religious, educational, or recreational purposes. However, this doesn't prevent the diocese from demolishing the church and selling the property. It would restrict what the new owner could do with the property and would require legislation on the state level to remove the restriction. Now, we have been talking about whether or not Catholicism in Worcester has the cultural relevance of an Applebee's or not, and whether calling Worcester a post-Catholic city really means anything other than there's not a lot of Catholics. Are there second and third order effects of this? I would argue that this is one of them.
Yeah.
That, is the state legislature gonna, how likely would they be to pass a piece of legislation that's going to overcome the deed restriction to let the diocese, get a good amount of money for this property, versus are they going to be decide that that's a problem and that they don't want to go along with that?
This is where that comparison to the cultural relevancy of an Applebee's actually comes in perfectly, right? Because that deed restriction, it's not identical to, but it's very similar to the Dover Amendment, which is what creates the entity, the allowance for higher ed to be not-for-profit entities and whatnot, right? All they have to do is provide an educational component to anything that they're doing, and everything in that property remains tax-free.
Right.
So, but you could actually build an Applebee's on a college campus in Worcester or in Massachusetts, and that Applebee's is now tax-free. So, I think we're getting into a really weird place where you would almost have an easier argument to say, look, well, maybe we just build an Applebee's down here, and if it has a small playground in the back, then that will fit all the needs of this deed restriction, and we can just knock the building down. And I don't think you're going to find many people, other than the folks who are already circling the building, who are really going to be upset about that.
I just wanted to say, to get back to the point I was talking about previously, I think that it seems like a generation ago, the legislature would be totally excited to, again, just say, yeah, sure, Bishop McManus, whatever you want, and now less so. I think this was an article that...
Does anyone even bother calling the bishop to see what his take on anything is now?
The bishop is a very quiet man. He may not even tell you what he wants.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone is reaching out on that front.
You and I were looking at an article where there was a lawyer who'd represented a lot of abuse victims talking, and he was talking about how the presumably outgoing governor of California, Jerry Brown, despite being a very progressive, is also somebody who, as a young man, was in the seminary and was considering becoming a priest. And that maybe as a result of this, Jerry Brown has been against increasing the statute of limitations in California on sex crimes committed on minors. Mm-hmm. And this increasing the statute of limitations is something that advocates for victims of sex clergy abuse have pretty universally been in favor of, increasing the statute of limitations so that there's lots of people who are presumably responsible for this who are still around, but because the statute of limitations is whatever number of years, and that number of years has passed, these people can't be prosecuted. This lawyer was looking at it and saying that the presumably incoming governor of California, San Francisco Governor Gavin Newsom, presumably has no similar kinds of nostalgic feelings towards the Catholic Church as Governor Brown, and so is presumably much more enthusiastic about the idea of changing the statute of limitations. And that's another place where I think whether you are a post-Catholic city or a post-Catholic state or not, makes a difference. That I don't remember if we talked about this on this show or not. Like the idea that there's sort of two levels of cover-up of these things. That there's the level of cover-up where the bishop, allows these things to go on and does what he needs to do to make sure that you are not going to have to pay the price in the world of criminal justice for the crimes you've committed. And then there's the level which is the police looking the other way, the local judiciary looking the other way, the press not really following up on stories the way that the press otherwise would, because your place is so overwhelmingly Catholic, or the powers that be have such an affinity for the Catholic Church that they all just kind of want to soft pedal that as much as possible. Honestly, I assume that if I was the district attorney of Worcester or the whatever of Worcester, the police chief of Worcester, I would presumably be in that same category. I kind of think that, considering I'm sitting here on the radio talking trash about the abuse scandal week after week, maybe I wouldn't be, but probably I would be. So I don't want to pretend that this is people being corrupt. This is just people have biases. This is just one of the biases that people would have in a Catholic city and not have in a post-Catholic city.
Sure, I guess so. It's still weird, though.
Yeah, but I mean, people have biases towards whatever. I mean, people, at some point you just have to decide, like, this is what we're going to spend our time researching, and this is what we're going to spend our time not researching.
I would just say that there's probably a strong distinction to be made between a bias that is going to allow a city to say, we're going to allow parking on the sides of streets that we don't normally allow parking on Sunday because there's lots of parishioners coming in here, and turning your back on child rape. I don't know. I would just say there's probably... I know nuance is something that is beyond the norm these days, but yeah, I think it's safe to say that we should probably be looking for folks that wouldn't just turn their back on that one.
So as I was saying, Our Lady of Mt Carmel Church, we have the Hope Cemetery Barn at 119 Webster Street. We have Salisbury House on Harvard Street, Deacon David Richards' house at 5 Richards Street, Bramble Hill on Salisbury Street. Those are the places. There's a bunch of others that are kind of the second string.
And one of those is just in the process of getting sold, I believe, too, right?
Which
the one in Salisbury Street. One of the properties that is on Salisbury Street. It was in the Telegram this weekend, I believe. That
good.
A large property that was
good.
The rest.
Bramble Hill.
Yeah.
At 757 Salisbury Street.
Yeah.
Romina, do you care at all about this kind of historical preservation stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could really keep them all, but yeah, it's really, I mean, we talked about that like before, like it is kind of expensive. I mean, it's like how it cannot be affordable to for the city to do that, but there could be maybe different ideas that like how they do it in Europe. Sometimes that they make, for example, a church as a community center or a pub or like a coffee shop, things like that. You can maybe keep the infrastructure and make it like, I don't know. with profit.
Repurpose it somehow.
Repurpose it somehow. There is going to be today a movie, so later, I don't know if we have time for that.
Go ahead. This is the time. The last 2 minutes are yours. Talk about
the Huracan is a film they're going to show today in Beacon Street in this church. Let me see. It's about a nación en resistencia. It's about Puerto Rico, and so it's a summary of how Puerto Rico has been the colony of U.S. and the struggles that have been past. These people, Puerto Ricans, even after the hurricane, how and the filmmakers are going to be there. So it's the Christian Community Church in 108 Beacon Street at 7 p.m.
7 p.m. to 9:30.
So I hope people can go. It's organized by the National Boricua Human Rights Network, New England. So so that event. And the other event next Saturday is in Stone Soup. It's a fundraising for Stone Soup. So the Tertulia Julia de Burgos is organizing that. It's kind of an open mic for people that are like can go with poetry and music and to do this fundraiser.
It's kind of a bilingual open mic.
It's mainly in Spanish.
Yeah.
But orientated of and resistance.
You're not going to feel weird or out of place if you're only an English speaker.
Because everything is we always translate anything.
Yes.
Everything. So
it's accessible.
Yeah, we have been there.
Well, Romina, thanks for being on the show. I'm sorry
Thank
that it takes you moving away from Worcester to finally get you on the 508 show, but I'm glad you were here.
Mike, we should also make sure, because we're really tight on time, that everyone knows that this Sunday at 3 p.m. in the parking lot of Austin Liquor that you will be fighting boxing a kangaroo for a charity.
Yeah.
And where is all that money going to?
A charity to be named, I think. So, hey, thanks for listening to 508, guys. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.